All right, hello, my darlings. Welcome back to Radio Wasteland and our guest, Samuel Hofman. Samuel Hofman has been on before. I'm sure he will be on again. Samuel, this is the first time that I have ever had a fan of a guest reach out to me asking me to get the guest back on the show. So you're quite famous, or
Oh.
or you're more famous than we are. I don't know. That may make you not very famous at all, actually. But
Well, I had a bunch of people asking for a long time, and I finally just said, well, you need to ask them if I can be back. And so I mentioned that, and so they went after and tried to contact you, I guess.
well, it works.
So,
It works. The squeaky wheel.
yep.
And
We all have a little more time on our hands, also. So
yeah. Ain't that the truth? Ain't that the truth? I'm working with half a job, but it didn't take me long to fill up all my spare time with stupid little hobbies to take my time up.
Yeah.
We've talked about this before, but we were talking about it briefly while I was trying to get the technological side of this set up here. We tried to do Zoom for this. We tried to do Skype for this. I called you. I heard something I've never heard before. At first, it said that your phone wasn't taking calls from my number, and then it was telling me that you were disconnected. It just kept switching back and forth as it was giving me instructions of what to do. And then at one point, it wanted me to type in the number that I was calling from. So, what's up with your phone, man?
Well, I think they don't really want anybody to talk to me from other states or from Europe or things like that. When I have people from Europe try to call me, they are told that my phone number of 15 years is disconnected. And numerous people in the U.S. have tried to call me in from Canada as well, and they cannot get through. And it's, as far as I know, I have no blocks whatsoever on my phone, with the exception of the standard robocall thing that hopefully everybody has. But other than that, there's no reason for this, except I'm sure that I'm thoroughly being watched. So.
Yeah, this prompts the question. We've talked before, but of course, we have new listeners, so we can prompt the question some more, and that is, who is the they that doesn't want the message out? Because there's a lot of potential theys in this world. There's lefts, there's rights, there's a government on the whole, there's shadow governments. Who do we think this they is?
Well, unfortunately, we have to say all of the above. And because there are numerous factions, including factions exterior of our immediate environment, meaning extraterrestrial, non-Earth-based factions that are probably numerous ones that are all trying to get their agenda, because there is no real good or evil. There is no good or bad. It is political or sociological agenda, according to whichever faction wants to do whatever they want to do and back their money behind. But there's a lot of different factions here right now. We've had tons of evidence of that in different ways. And I could, digress into that topic, but I'm sure that we need to stay a little closer to where we are at now. But there's a whole lot of distraction going on, and we can see that in our daily news and everything. For example, most people are not informed currently of the weather issues that are going on around the world, and there's obviously some attempt at a distraction ratio. So.
Yeah, that's one thing that I wanted to discuss, the distraction. It's like when I look at social media, especially with this upcoming election, I got a bunch of people yelling the same thing at one another. They're just all, oh, well, Trump went after these women, and they're all, well, Biden sniffs people's hair. Well, Trump was working with the Russians, and now Biden, they're saying, is working with the Russians. It's like they're just hucking the same thing at one another. Do you think this is all just to distract from a greater truth?
Well, we have now, if we go to the reference of what we've been citing at Montana Skywatchers on Facebook for the last couple of months. Now, I've talked about in the last show the 180-day cycle. Now, we are in a time period right now where the passing planets are so very, very close to us, and there's an asteroid group, or multiple asteroid groups, I should say, underneath these larger gas giants, sort of like their own Oort cloud group. And And NASA has been putting out all these tidbits saying that, this is this, which what they are is they're giving a half-truth. There's a series of asteroids underneath Attu's moon, and they're coming so close to us in these close passes that they're seriously and drastically affecting our weather. Now, last week, or this week, as a matter of fact, 4 days ago, we've had this massive storm that went through over the United States and has torn all these trees down and wiped out power. There's still no power in Ohio. Well, a very large portion of their crops have been damaged. And we saw this 3 days in a row, and there will be a thing tonight as well. So if you live in literally North Dakota all the way to the East Coast, stare up at whatever's going to fly over the top of us, because it's going to be dark, it's going to be electrical, and it's going to be windy and scary. But anyway, I really think there's a lot of stuff going on that they're trying to distract us from paying attention, and some of it might be highly dangerous, and some of it might be factional activity from space, because we have been seeing nonstop every day. I'm getting 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 sightings of the Texas Cube or the Long Box Cube. Now, this week we saw some footage of a 3-rocketed engine on this very large object lifting up in front of the sun, and it was so blatantly weird footage that we have never seen anything like this before, that we were actually attributing it to like the Long Box Cube repositioning itself in orbit. Because a year and a half, 2 years ago, when the Long Box Cube was originally sighted by the masses around from the United States, and reports coming in from Europe as well at the same time, we noticed that they were orbiting literally from the North Pole, going all the way to the South Pole, and then orbiting back up to the North Pole in a very close proximity orbit. And it was very surprising, because this thing was large and it was cold and putting off weird gaseous little trails and stuff, because you could see the cold of space versus the atmospheric reaction. And so we think that some of that is happening again. So there's this activity up in space, the activity of the crossing of the planets and the asteroids, and the electrical activity and the storms. And if you look there, in Asia is flooding. One of the problems from one of the close passing planets, Nepenthe, it does this atmospheric suck up of moisture, and then it dumps down a year's worth of rain within an hour. And we've got tons of footage showing many of these occurrence storms from around the world in the last few months that are so overwhelmingly proof that this is happening over again, because it's dumping so much water that you've never ever seen anything like this in your entire life. It's just this centrifuge of just mass amounts of millions of gallons of water just coming down in what we refer to as a rain bomb. And
there was something on the news the other day about something like, I don't know, 6 inches of rain in 10 minutes in China at one point.
Right, and all of the dams in China are overflowing. Now they have, this is standard monsoon season, but they're recording this as beyond anything they've ever recorded in recorded history. Now we have to take into account that China's records go back almost 8,000 years, and they had the Great Flood, and that was literally at the time of the last cycle of the passing planets of Nibiru. So if they're recording even higher, of course, I don't know if they're cross-referencing that far back, but if they've got the highest record amounts of monsoonal flow they've ever experienced, well, then it's telling me that we're, this is factual, and we've got tons of footage coming in daily, and we can't argue with it. And yet, I have people that are questioning me, well, why don't you go to your peer groups and report all of this science? And as we can find out that reporting it to deaf ears who don't want to hear about it and are paid not to talk about it, well, then I'd be wasting my time. And I think, the citizen science needs to come out and just override the paid-off powers that be, the they that are out there, and we need to actually get on, and here I'm saying those words, get on board with the facts that we've proven over the last decade, that yes, these planets are here. We've got so many matching pictures time after time for literally 10 years straight, so we can't argue with the science anymore. I mean, it's proof. It's absolute, undeniable proof that it's happening. And the question now becomes, are you going to get on board with the information, or are you going to stick your head in the sand and not pay attention to it?
Yeah, you sent me one clip. I think it was a video, and I have YouTube TV. Not that this really matters, but for some reason my app doesn't keep up with the internet very well, and if I try to rewind, it cuts the audio. So my wife and I religiously try not to rewind live TV. You know, but this video that you sent us was actually on the other day, and my wife didn't see it, and it was worth rewinding. And I rewind it because it's that black and white footage of the storm moving across the country with the electrical stuff. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. And I showed it to her, and I'm just all like, whoa, man, this is like some apocalyptic, day after tomorrow looking stuff right here.
Right, and it spreads in a circle with this circular pattern. And it, I don't know if you ever saw the video I put out I believe it was in 2018. It was, of course, in July, I think, when it was in the middle of the 180-day cycle when we had sightings here from my location in Lowell, Montana, and then we also had a person who was in Stevensville, which is about 35 miles away from me here, and then we had somebody in Bozeman, and we had somebody in Billings, and then somebody in South Dakota, all confirmed the path of these objects that were going over the top of us. And then we cross-referenced it to the SSEC satellite footage, and it all matched. And lo and behold, this was the object cluster group going over the top of us because we had confirmations from 5 locations plus radar. So, and it's the same pattern, but it's a slightly different approach angle from the south, whereas before it was more west to east, and now it's approaching from the south and heading in a northeast pattern. And then we saw that footage that you were referring to, and it literally all matched. And they were getting hurricane force winds of 125 mile an hour gusts, and this is of course what tore all those trees down in Iowa, excuse me. And yet they're not commenting about this on the news at all, and they're giving over 100 mile an hour winds. Well, a circular storm, anything past 75 miles an hour is a Category 1 hurricane. Mm. And if this is happening in the northern hemisphere, that is not supposed to exist. And if they're naming it a derecho, well, then that's a lie, because it is not a sandstorm, because you don't get 125 mile an hour vortexual storms that develop in the middle of Minnesota out of the blue. Mm-hmm. And it's going on today again as well. And I'm watching these supercells that are developing out of nowhere.
So, a lot of people would just automatically jump to the argument of this is global warming, this is the cause of fossil fuels. But, I know that, you're saying that this is a part of this Nibiru cluster collection, second solar system. But what I'm really getting at here is a lot of us haven't seen this in our lifetime, so it's obviously larger than human life. But is this par for the course on a geologic or astrological time frame? Would this be expected if we knew better? Do you get where I'm going with this?
Frankly, we've done very, very well in comparison. I think that might have a lot to do with chemtrailing or something like this, and I hate to even discuss that. But the G7 countries are faring better than the other countries are, and so I think there is a certain amount of collective mitigation going on. And there's a lot of people that talk about geoengineering and HAARP and all of that, and I try to just avoid that because, this is so large, and there is so influential from, the magnetosphere on the planet going all cattywampus all the time. And I saw somebody the other day saying that this was large celestial creatures or beings that were affecting our planetary magnetosphere. And I sat there and I just chuckled. I went, oh, my God, I can't believe you believe that. But
it's like Cthulhu or something. It's like Lovecraft. Yeah.
Well, and of course, everything is point of view. And, if you go back through history and you look at some of these legends and you look at the description of King Merodach, who ended up turning into a god, the Sumerians, and all of this, and you cross-reference some of these references and realize that there's a certain amount of spiritual superstition that goes involved in the descriptions of some of these things, that it would actually, if you took and cross-referenced the passing Nibiru group, in effect, could actually mean these things. Now, granted, it's very hard to do that, and this is, of course, what scholars and theologians have been doing for centuries, trying to debate what this actually means. But if you really look about it, the Greeks knew that we had two suns. The other groups of civilizations prior to them also knew we had two suns. And it's only within modern history, from literally the 1100 on, that information starts to get changed by people. And that was done mostly through money and the church and arguments between the religions as well. So the whole overall thing is, yes, this has got to be, because when the second sun arrived, all the planets tipped. All the planets are heating up. It's not just Earth. Now, if it was just Earth heating up, I'd say, well, okay, maybe man has a great deal to do with the CO2 and the carbon and all of that. But I think this is overall, because of the planetary, Earth is tipped. We're doing this wobble thing. People are making reports that the moon is going far to the north again. So, it's all pointing to there's another big beach ball in the pool with us. There's more going on than we can say is just planetary.
So we can assume by this belief system that 3,600 years ago or so, these same sorts of weather phenomena were going on.
Right. There is evidence of in the climatology from somewhere in between 1750 BC to 1650, within that 100-year period, that the climate was excruciatingly hot. We also had, this is, of course, when the volcanic occurrences occurred in the Greek islands, where I think it's, I'm trying to think of the name of the island. Anyway, this one major island in the Greek islands blew, created a tidal wave that took out everything but Egypt, because they have a huge northern marshlands that protected them from a good portion of the tidal wave.
Are we talking Mount Vesuvius?
No, actually, there was a major one. It's like Saint something Island that blew up, and it's just a volcanic core now with all these little mini islands around, and they think that was the big one that went off, that took out the Minoans and the Mycenaeans and caused all of this really harsh climatology type weather, and then all of a sudden this groups of people just vanished, and that was probably through disease and change in climate and inability to grow crops, because if it got hot and nothing grew, well, then these people are, of course, going to either leave unexpectedly and migrationally, or in a hurry or whatever, and vanish and not leave record, which they're still searching for. Where did the Minoans and the Mycenaeans and all these other people go? And climate migration, and when everything you have is frying on fire and dying, and you're walking through sand, well, you're not going to leave a lot of record behind where your people went.
Sure. Yeah.
Especially if there's far less of them.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a little off topic, but one thing I would, earlier you were talking about a rocket, or a 3-engine rocket. And, one thing that I have a hard time with your Facebook group with is that so much information goes up there that it can be very overwhelming. I would love to see you create a curated album in your photos that is basically like a gallery that's just for the skeptics, like just the hand-picked stuff that's like, this right here, sure, you can get abstract on some of the clouds and stuff, but this right here is undeniable. Here's a collection of 15 pictures that will blow your mind. I would love to see that.
I'll put one together. I've thought about that numerous times, and a lot of the times what stopped me from doing that is that some people get hold of these pictures and then they spread them all over the internet without the background information. So what I need to literally do is I need to go in and hand tag every photo that I would put into that file, and that way they can't do that. And then add a description, and I do need to sit down and do some work for that. And I appreciate your opinion on that, and I will do that.
Yeah, because don't get me wrong. I mean, I like it. I'm going through your Facebook page, and I see the pictures and stuff like that. But you have a very large group with a very rabid following, and there is just a lot of information to go through there.
Yeah, and that's what I try to keep them down to, actually submitting their own personal sightings, and then not giving us reposts from YouTube because I found this on such and such a site and it's really cool, and it does have a tendency to make it very, very hard to stick to just the sightings alone, because then everybody's throwing in multiple topics, and yes, you're very right, it can be overwhelming, and there is so much information. And if you are a new person and you don't know what I mean when I say green planet necessity, then yeah, it can be very, very difficult. See, we've had the fortunate opportunity to watch these guys come in since they were tiny little dots in the sky. And then over time they got bigger and bigger and bigger, and then we started recognizing some of their cloud patterns on how they behave when they start to enter towards our atmosphere and how it reacts with our weather and stuff. And over the years, which it's been a decade now, which is amazing. Like, it went by so fast, I can't believe it. But
it has.
Yeah. And yet it drug, it drug like I was pulling a train with my tongue. But anyway, we've had the opportunity to collect and mount all of this information together. And so we've known that this picture that we got random here is this because we've seen it so many times. And we've seen the cycles where it dawned on me the other day, and I was looking back at years and years old drawings, and people still tease me about my crayon drawings, as they call them. By the way, I've been using colored crayons, or colored pencils for years, not crayons anymore. But anyway, I'll occasionally use crayon if I don't have the right color. But anyway, I've been teased a lot by that. But that's the fastest, best way for me to create this without sitting in front of a computer for hours and hours and trying to create a picture and making a mistake and having to start all over again. Where if I make a mistake, I can crunch up the paper, throw it in the garbage, and grab a new sheet of paper and start all of them, and then I'm accurate.
Well, as an artist myself, I need to defend the crayons because I use crayon and watercolor and pencil and pretty much things that I can buy in the office section at any store. That's what I've always used for my art. That's what I do, and I consider it art. So
and
those people can shut up.
I have two kids at home who are both artists as well, and they steal my pens all the time. So, I'm stuck. Oh, well, all I've got is this red crayon. We're stuck. Here we go.
That's how I got started, is stealing my mom's stuff.
Yeah, there you go. So, and my accuracy rate has been so high that people over the years have just, come to start listening and going, you're right again. And, oh, my God, I'm going to have to listen to you. And unfortunately, the new people don't get to see that as often, and they've not gone back through the 10 years together like we have with so many of our members. And we're well over 12,000 members right now. And, and I'm still trying to limit the amount that and I got in trouble, believe it or not. I let 500 people in it for a week, and I'm still in trouble for it because I let all the nice people in, and then Facebook chided me over that, and now I got no feed. And I can only read the 3 top posts on my own sites, where I can go to my personal page, and I can scroll all the way down the page for an hour. But I can go to these sites now, and I'm in trouble because I let people in. Okay, and we're getting chided. And granted, Facebook has turned into kind of a hall monitor since they ended up in Congress. And they're trying to cover some of the. And there is, and I should mention that there is so much negative disinfo coming from so many sources about so many different subjects that. I have to say to everybody listening out there, if it's a negative finger-pointing statement, completely ignore it. Please just stop feeding into the negative crap, and let's start listening to the people who are positive, and maybe the ones who want to do something intelligent for a change instead of cutting somebody else down to make themselves look better.
What I want from Facebook is a button that I can turn off politics, because at this point, let's be realistic. This country is so divided that we've all already made up our minds about who we're going to vote for, why don't we just stop talking about it? It's not like there's anybody out there who's on the fence any longer.
And if they are, then they should be informed on their own rather than listening to the rhetoric that's being said to them.
Right, then watching some meme of Biden sniffing somebody's hair is not going to change their mind. It's like
I couldn't believe how fast it started turning. I mean, they just mentioned the choice for vice president, and all of a sudden it turned ugly within 2 hours.
Oh yeah. And
within 2 hours, it was ugly.
Oh, yeah, and you can tell people are just holding their racist tongues, and yeah, I just wish I could turn it off entirely. I want to go back to seeing people's avocado toast and conspiracy theories about Mothman, the good old days,
I want to see some laundry soap commercials. I want to see commercials on, Jimmy John's or something like that.
So, Andrea was nice enough to collect a couple of comments off of, because on our YouTube channel, you are by and large the largest amount of our views over time. You are by and large the most. And so here's a comment that we got, and we figured we might as well pose it to you because it was a question directly to you. And that was, maybe the next time you interview Sam Hofman, you could ask him what that large, bright light is that has been rising just north of east lately. It's been getting bigger, and also if he knows what is causing some of the stars to twinkle red, blue, green, and white. I've been seeing that for about 6 years now, have yet to get an answer from anyone.
Okay, well, the star in the east by northeast is... we're moving in the galactic plane as well as our yearly standard orbit, and the green is, or excuse me, the star in the east is most likely Venus, because recently we've had Saturn and Jupiter and Venus all in the same proximity with the moon, which has been in the south by southeast. Generically, it's also been due south. It's also been up to the west, up to the northeast, because the moon has been moving oddly. And by the way, that's not the moon moving; it's Earth tipping from the push from other planets, because our view of the moon does not change. It's Earth that actually rolls. And the other question was, why are they glittering different? That has to do with the tumbling of light through our atmosphere. The shining and the shimmering of starlight has to do with wave refractions through different densities of our atmosphere. They're not actually twinkling, unless you're watching tumbling asteroids, and tumbling asteroids and comets do twinkle because of the tumble and the light refraction therein from different refracted edges.
Now, I'm assuming that this guy is saying that because, of course, I know that about the twinkle, but I'm assuming that he means that it's been a little bit stronger. And so the first thing that I thought when I saw it was maybe it was some sort of boost in our atmospheric situation that's going on. More moisture in the air, more dust particles, more...
I've been noticing that there's almost an electrical enhancement of a lot of things going on as well. And I kind of attribute that, because when the second sun did arrive, atomic decay ratio changed and kind of goofed everybody's brains up when they were wondering why, and they never could cross-reference it. We know that the poles on all of the major normal planets started having these hexagonal north illuminating pole, and the southern poles of these planets were illuminating in different ways. And so I believe if you add another larger magnet to the scheme, I'm sure that our electrical enhancement has gone way up. The human resonance is off the charts. So it's entirely possible that it's correct. You're right.
What is the human resonance? I haven't heard that term before.
The Schumann resonance.
Schumann resonance. What is that?
Right. The Schumann resonance is a harmonic resonance of our magnetosphere. It's the sound of Earth. All the planets put off a sound, because sound equals light equals matter in physics, and each planet puts off a sound. And the Earth's Schumann resonance has been increasing drastically ever since about 2009, 2010. And of course, that has to do with the harmonic reference to other bodies as well, because these sounds bounce off each other. And if we go back to our favorite topic, which is proton proximity likeness identification, where two protons, when they meet, when one harmonic proton has X harmonic value and it meets a smaller, less harmonic or less humming or lower humming proton, then the lower humming proton will meet the harmonic hum of the higher existing proton hum. And then they're forever joined in harmonic balance between each other, even across time and space. That's called proton proximity likeness identification. So, most likely, with the visitation of the planets again, they're all humming like bells off of each other.
I see. I have another question here that I assume is not directed at Radio Wasteland, because we didn't take anything down. It said they had removed all of Samuel's videos. Why? And then it says now the jerks put some of his videos back up. Did you have an incident where your videos were taken down?
There's been 2 incidents of it, or actually more. We had a co-admin for a while that decided to make unavailable over 2.5 years worth of videos that we put together. And then for a period of time, those which we were posting were not playing for a good portion of Europe and Asia, and they could not access them. And then now recently, all of a sudden, if you type my name into Google or Bing or YouTube, all of a sudden now all of our works and your videos and a whole bunch of ones from Fight for Our Freedom Radio and all of my material is suddenly available. And so I've become apparently a real thing now, which I was kind of patting myself on the back going, oh, okay, I'm real. Bing says I'm real.
Right. The internet says you're real now. That's
yeah.
good.
The internet says I'm real now, so it's okay. It's like awesome. And I'm not doing this for celebrity status. I'm doing this because I believe it's the correct thing to do to tell people the truth. And in 1980, that's the number one thing that crossed my mind, because I still to this day believe that if we would have been informed that there was another group of planets on its way here and there are other people living on these planets and they have a higher technology, if they would told us this, we would be the Jetsons by now, and we would have gotten our poop in a group and maybe put some of this greed to the side and started caring about the little people, because when they talk about Black Lives Matter, all lives matter, and especially poor people's lives matter, because we have enough on this planet where we're throwing away so much that we could actually start thinking about a way to take care of the people who don't have enough.
Right.
I mean, if we can fly to and flip people upside down in a plane for $500,000, well, for that same darn ride, we can feed a hell of a lot of people for that $500,000.
Oh, I agree. It's ridiculous that, I was making some joke to myself about people who buy stuff and then want to keep it in their garage so their kids can clean it out after their funeral. It's like, just sell the damn stuff and help somebody. It's like, what the hell?
Right. And the price of gold has gone skyrocket, and the rich are getting richer, and then the people who don't have any gold or even a decent place and we really have to focus on that. There's a huge crisis going on the Syrian border and Turkish border, and it doesn't make the news. There's a couple of million people sitting there in the mud, and they've got COVID-19 going on through their camps because nobody even wants to go in there because there's no doctors.
All right.
I mean, whoa, come on, people, we got a lot of work to do, and this isn't the way to go about it. And by finger pointing and being angry at each other, we need to start looking around and saying, okay, the people in charge who are making all this money, you're not doing a very good job. We need to put them. And I'm not in agreement with defunding this, that, or the other thing. But who have we handed power to? Because they're sure not doing it right.
No, I agree. And, I don't like the word defund. I get the concept, but I like the word like reallocate, create departments that deal with specific things. Cops have been complaining for years about getting calls about dogs. I mean, cops shouldn't be getting calls about dogs.
Well, and that's a really good point. Yeah, there should be, multiple offices that, that this person goes, okay, this is a mental health call. Let's send the right people,
Right, yeah.
not the guys with the guns, people who are going to react to or have had a long, busy, scary day.
Or at least just one guy with a gun at the back,
You hand somebody military equipment and they wear it out in public, and they're going to immediately assume a military persona, and you continue to scare the hell out of them.
Right.
And then they go out on the street thinking, oh, my God, I'm at war. Of course they're going to react the way that they're reacting. And their training doesn't mean anything because they're walking around in war gear.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're driving tanks.
I totally get you. And I'm back and forth on this one because, the police were militarized after 9/11. And so, if there was some big terrorist attack, maybe it'd be good if they were militarized, but at the same time, maybe they shouldn't just bring it out all willy-nilly. It's like,
right,
I'm kind of back and forth on that one. I can't figure out how to solve that problem,
I hate to go political because it's not working. And we cannot, these are people. These are not terrorists. These are not looters and thieves. I mean, when people are being shot over a taillight infraction,
oh, yeah.
When people are being shot over a $20 bill, when people are being shot over because and a lot of that's that ego thing, and I'm reaching into a political comment, and I shouldn't. But when you walk away from a cop, and the cop thinks that you should listen to them, and if you don't because you're a human, and maybe you've been having a bad day, you shouldn't die over that. They should, it's like high-speed car crashes. If you've got the guy's license plate number, let him go. You can pick him up tomorrow. You don't have to kill him or anybody else around, and then the pedestrian that gets wiped out because they were crossing the street for milk.
Yeah.
We don't have to escalate this thing.
We need to hit him with some sort of Batman tracker. Batman hits people with trackers. Can't we get trackers going?
Do we have to kill people over an $80 ticket? Do we have to kill people over a $10 ticket? Do we have to kill people over what was the assumed $20 counterfeit bill?
Right.
Okay, that's a treasury agent thing. We don't have to kill that man over it.
Yeah, I agree. Well, we better back out of politics before we get ourselves in trouble. All right,
we've gotten into conversations. Yep, sorry.
Back. Oh, my fault. I started it.
The planets.
But back into the YouTube comments. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, it's really important that people pay attention to. We're going to have some extreme weather, and it's going to get worse and worse and worse. And we need to start thinking about the food issues. We need to start thinking about clothing, and we may not have power. I mean, look at all the power outages and all the things that are going on the East Coast. They're going to be running out of spare parts before you know it. I mean, because the shipping, if China is flooding, and Asia is flooding, and Saudi Arabia is flooding, all of this shipping is getting interrupted. Mm. And we're already seeing, I went to buy green beans the other day, and there were none. None. Zip. Zero. And this was at a Walmart. There was no green beans on the shelf, and it's been weeks like this.
Right.
So we're going to see shortages. We're going to see interruptions.
Yeah, I guess there's a shortage on nationwide shortage on Clorox wipes now.
And the products that the cloth to make it.
Yeah, that was it. The cloth to make it. And
I went to buy socks. I couldn't buy socks. There was no socks.
Yeah, to tiptoe close to politics, but in a way that I think all Americans can agree. It's like all of our personal protective equipment was made in China. Now, I don't want to talk about the politics part, but shouldn't every community shouldn't every state have the ability to make some of these important things? Because, let's say the weather is getting apocalyptic. It's like we need to doomsday prep a little bit as a community, maybe not as a person, but as a community, as a state. We should be able to make the emergency stuff that we need. And I'm not talking guns and stuff like that. I'm talking antibiotic, Right. You could stub your toe and die if there's no antibiotic.
Right, if you're living in a warm enough climate, yes, then where the bacteria, and this is, like you get a scratch in the jungle, and it could be a serious, death issue. And we do need to plan it. And what amazes me is like Dial antibacterial soap stopped producing like a year ago, and it was one of the best soaps in the world. And why did they suddenly, stop making the best soap that there was? And there's a lot of things going on. And you could say Georgia Guidestones, you could say all of this, and and the vaccines and all. Oh boy, there's a big spooky can of worms going on right before our very eyes.
Yeah.
And if our world leaders are behaving completely not normal, then maybe we better start looking at things and not panic.
Right.
It's the panicking person that makes the mistakes, and they want the lunatic fringe to come out of the woodwork and go crazy and add to the chaos, so that they will be instilled with more power because we're fearful.
Right.
So we can't give in on the left, and we cannot give in on the right, on the fear side or on the overreactionary basis.
Right.
And this goes as well with the planets and the asteroids. You can't panic and say, "Oh Christ, it's going to happen," and then I need to charge up my credit card and buy all of this crap. But yet at the same time, we cannot be remiss, because it's better to have something and not need it than need something and not have it.
Yeah.
And so everybody has to stay in the middle and try to think. And a lot of times you'll hear the lies. When they stretch and they bend around something, they're avoiding the truth.
Mm.
And we see a lot of that in our and suddenly that thing called the truth and respect toward our fellow man has suddenly left the building, and I'm kind of wondering where all that went.
Yeah, I keep wanting to say to people, that perfect world you're talking about will never exist. So, team up and make some kind of change, because that's your only option. Each person's perfect world is never going to exist. All right, I have another question for you from the YouTube, from one of our videos.
Okay.
And this guy says, that mention of iron oxide dust. I've been noticing a reddish colored dust on vehicles in my area lately, south of England. Completely different color to soil around here, and I've not actually seen it before. If it is iron oxide mixed with aluminum from chemtrails, some makes a real interesting compound. He's just kind of getting at,
right.
Is there a connection
there? There's if we go to the one side of the spectrum and we talk about the planets, there is a geological record in Caribbean coral sample that does not match the samples from Africa, and this happens every 3,800 years is what they say. And that, of course, falls within the Nibiru timeline. But he is also close enough regionally to the African swill storm that's going on right now with all the iron oxide dust from the old rock, which is from the early pre-life on the planet, when there was a lot more oxygen, et cetera. And that's why it rusts and turns red. But anyway,
the big bugs.
He's also within the region of that Sahara dust storm. So the best way you could tell is to scrape some up with a credit card or a soft card on your car. That way you don't scratch it. And then bring a magnet to it and then see how much of that material lifts up off of the car with the magnet.
Oh, that's interesting.
But there's also, is some of this stuff actually causing some of these infections in the lungs, because iron oxide dust does cause pneumonia-like symptoms if you breathe it. So then we, of course, go across the spectrum to, is this natural and it's occurring, and or is this somebody trying to wipe us out, that kind of crap. And I try not to go over to that side of the spectrum.
Right.
Because, yes, I know there is a herd culling coming on, and this happens every cycle, but I try not to believe that my fellow man is intentionally screwing us over for gold.
Well, they've been doing that long before those planets got here, so...
Yeah, well, which is innate in our species, because we were created, pardon the expression, oh boy, I'm reaching into that really deep bag here. We were created to mine this gold because Earth is a factory planet for the larger system. And if your listeners hadn't heard me talk about that in the past, they're now going, what? And I'm sorry, but there's a lot more to this story than I talk about publicly on a regular basis, because there is so much more going on than man is, as in a general rule, wants to believe, because there are other life forms out there, and they've got so much more going on than just seven guys in some little saucer. And there's factions, and there's numerous life forms and societies and planets full of many different people out there. And depending on your definition of people, beings, life forms. And we're tiny little speck compared to the rest of it.
Right.
And there's so much more going on. And a lot of it has to do with our Earth's commodities. And we are a commodity planet, and we provide to a larger, higher tech group of beings. And people worry about, us saving our planet. Well, it is not our planet. We don't own it. We are workers here. There's a higher ruling faction that they don't want you to know about because the people here in power want to retain their power. And so they are jostling positions with the people who are above them.
So is part of what we're implying here, so from putting words together of what you're saying, is that the planet system comes through, we're a commodity, it's mainly for gold and other precious metals, rare earths, stuff like that. And then there's a culling. So can the expectation be that the way a culling would go would be by disastrous weather and disease?
In many cases, yeah, because you have the temperature change, and then when you have the temperature change, disease goes way up. And you get
we're
you get
currently in some degree of disastrous weather and disease. That's all I'm pointing out, I guess.
Yeah, and you get a stronger worker. Survival of the fittest. We get to start all over again, and we stop polluting the hell out of our planet and stop wiping each other out because there's too many of us. And then we'll go back to doing what our thing is, and then they'll come down and reallocate new factions to make sure they get their next supply group. And then people jostle for positioning, and
so that would explain maybe why the higher powers are just seem to be more weathering the storm than doing anything about it.
Right, and to them it is maybe one or two life cycles, but to us it's been 3,654 years, and we've had generation after generation. They get a better worker. There's less of us to control, then that way they can instill the quest of why we're here into a smaller faction, and we'll go, oh yes, oh Lord, the people who are above us, and then we'll have our superstitious behavior, and we'll follow the rules and do what we're told for a while until we forget, and then we start hacking and polluting our world again. And this has happened 83.3 times since the management change here on Earth, 300,000 years. And we are not the first civilization to achieve higher level, nor are we the first group of workers. I'm sure there have been numerous versions of us prior. The Neanderthal, for instance. We got a smaller version. Now they can handle us easier and take better samples of us and move us easier. Instead of moving a bear, they're moving a wolf, which is easier to control. That kind of thing. We're smaller. We're more advanced. We're tougher, and we're just the new model. And then what we're going to develop into for the next time, who knows? And to them, it's one or two lifetimes. But to us, it's multiple generations.
Right. I know I've asked this before, but should we do anything about it? I mean, should we try to stop it, or should we just go with the flow,
I'm not going to agree with either. I think that we should be partially respectful and yet at the same time grow up for our rights. Through a negotiation situation, because we can't beat them technologically. They can show up and just wipe us out in a heartbeat, and they've proven that in the past as well. And that's, if you look into the Nephilim and all of this, and Marduk and all of that, and the past histories and legends, we are supposed to now. Supposedly, there is the promise of the decree where some of us are supposed to be evolving out, and that has been instigated in a plan long ago, and it took many generations for us to get to a level where we're going to be tolerable. We're still not there, and we still have a lot of work to do, and it may happen within our generation or the next few generations thereof. But I was told that they would approach some communities after there's far less of us to deal with, and after the survival of the better people, and those people would be approached, and some of them would be allowed to evolve up and out. That's what I was told. Now, how that works out and pans out in what duration of time period is a little vague. So that could be, this generation, it could be half the next generation, or it could take, 5. But to them, it's a very short period of time. To us, it's generations.
Right. Astrological time. When I was this is going to go off topic and come back around. When I was a kid, I've always been obsessed with horror films. And I went and I saw Pet Sematary in the theater. And I loved it so much that I came home that afternoon. I bought the book, and I sat there and I read the book all night. And I think I finished it in one night just going through it. But part of the freaky thing that happened to me that night was at like 4 a.m, from out of nowhere, I started hearing these thuds on the walls. And it ended up being not what one would say a locust storm, but it was like this cricket storm in my neighborhood, and they just hit my house like a serious rainstorm. All of a sudden, it was like machine gun of crickets all over my house and walls as I'm like 12 reading this horror book after watching a horror movie at 4 a.m. It was absolutely terrifying. And, there's in southern Asia, you've talked here about the heat waves and the rain bombs, and locust plagues growing because of those things. Are we really seeing larger locust plagues than we've seen in the past?
That has to do with rain and Africa, and they got a considerable amount of rain here about 2 months ago, and it was such a heavy rain that it went down deep into the ground, and those locust eggs can lay there for 20 years and not gestate. The moment they get hit with water, they turn into locusts, and they hatch.
That
is what happened.
Freaky science fiction stuff right there.
Right, and this is, of course, a magnification of all of these things, because the temperatures are going up and the climate change is occurring, and they're opening all of these little boxes, and now they are actually flying over the Himalayas, believe it or not. There was reports last week that they're dropping into the southwestern part of China, over the Himalayas by the millions and billions.
Oh,
and these are big locusts this year. And so, yes, the rains have created the weather, the freaky weather, the backwards weather on the southern part of the southern hemisphere is weird, and it's causing all kinds of stuff. And the South Pole, I looked this morning, has 309 kilometer per hour winds at 500 meters, and it's just freaky weather going on. And the whole northern hemisphere, all the way up to the northern pole, is doing all these weird, twisty, rotational lows that I've never seen before, and can barely understand the heads or tails out of it, because it's just so confusing. And I've never seen weather like this, and I've watched it all my life. And I just thought, like I said in other shows, I used to record the Weather Channel, and this isn't any weather I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And, of course, NASA is coming up with all these new names for all these new storms, because they're trying to hide the fact that most of this is a planetary pass or an object cluster group pass or Nepenthe rain bomb or Nepenthe sucking up our atmosphere with this big rotational storm that's 700 miles wide. And they call it, it's this and it's that. And it's like, no, I'm sorry. And they just keep putting these little half-truths where people buy into, and then they go, oh, okay, it's normal.
Yeah, well, I saw the locusts on the news, and I couldn't really tell if they were telling me that it was a big deal or par for the course. I couldn't really dissect the story that they were giving me, and then, frankly, to be honest, I forgot to look it up. But
the
I'm
locust
asking you.
Storm that is going on has moved from Africa all the way through the Arabias. It has gone into Malaysia, and it is now flying into China. This is a massive locust storm.
Wow. Yeah. It's a wonder that they just keep reporting the same things to me and then skimming over the other stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Look up what's going on with the Chinese dams. Look up what's going on in Japan. Look up what's going on. I got reports from France the other day. They lost a whole bunch of their wheat crop due to a wheat fire. There are ground fires all over. The fires are starting up in California again. The fires are starting in Montana again. The fire, we're watching climate change right before our very eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's happening, and it's been happening, and people keep asking, well, wouldn't we notice that by now? Well, excuse me, it's happening, but you have to go look for the information because they're not putting it on TV.
Right.
They're not telling people on purpose, and this is why we've got somebody that's distracting the hell out of everybody every day on TV.
Right.
And, there's like, look at this hand while the other hand is doing whatever they're doing. And then all this money that, whew, holy cow, somebody just threw money everywhere. And where's that going to land?
Yeah, I don't know what I believe on the whole, but I do know that some sort of global prestidigitation is going on, like you're saying, where they all look at one hand while the other does something else, That has
and
to be
Australia is locked down, and I think that's great on one hand. I'm all for lockdown because that was, if this is a real COVID-19, and this is a lab thing, why are we using masks instead of spacesuits? There's just so many things about all of this that's wrong that, my warning bells are going off. So I'm not buying into a lot of it. I'm just trying to stay in the middle and dance between the hailstones when they come down.
Oh, yeah. The only reason why I don't like lockdown is because my wife hates it. Personally, I jokingly refer to myself as scientifically formulated in a lab to basically live in lockdown. I was locking down before it was cool, like 10 years ago,
Right, yeah. This hasn't changed our world very much. I've got a little more putting practice in, and like I said, I rebuilt my porch because I had no choice, thanks to the weather. The weather, we've had some really windy scenarios here where they're talking, it used to be that when they were talking high winds, they were talking about 35 to 37 miles an hour. And now in Montana, the weather reports are going, well, we're going to be hitting 70, 75 mile an hour winds today. And this is hurricane force winds, and they're not telling people this.
Yeah.
Is
it called a hurricane when it's over land like that?
They don't exist.
I see.
They call that a low pressure system, but then you go start to look at the barometric pressure inside these, and of course that's not standard knowledge. You have to actually go and look this stuff up because they're not going to tell you. But then you see the barometric pressure, and when you see it in 900, and you're looking at hurricane strength low pressure systems, which never ever used to exist in the northern hemisphere. Period. And now they're talking. You remember they used to name these storms, and they did that for like a year and a half, and then they quit. Because people started going, wait a minute, this isn't right. Why are you naming these storms? Because these are on land, northern hemisphere hurricanes, which don't exist.
Right.
And so those people who knew this were starting to point this out, and so they stopped naming them, and then hope that John Q. Public just, accepts that which they're told on the 6 o'clock news, and then goes on to his dinner.
Right.
So. And which is what's happening. So they're saying less is more, and then people buy into it and they go, "Oh, okay, it's normal," and it's none of this is normal. We're seeing mass flooding around the entire world, and we're seeing mass drought all over the other part of the world, and crop shortages and stuff like that. And if you, like I say, if you go to Walmart and you look at the empty spots in our aisle, it's going to be worse. And with all of this shipping trouble and all of the people out of work and the crops failing in China, that means they're not going to be producing a bunch of stuff that we get from them, and they're going to want more of what we have from us. They're going to start buying everything they can get their hands on, and we're about to see a commodity war.
Right. Yeah, well, I don't disagree with you. There was all the concern about the, what was it? Oh, God, I can't even remember the name of the food distribution, our distribution situation where they were having to throw out all the vegetables and kill all the chickens and stuff just because we weren't able to get the food
mountains
out
of
there.
Potatoes left out in the field in Idaho.
Right.
Yeah. Mountains of potatoes.
Oh, God. I don't know if you've ever had a bag of potatoes so long that they go bad in your cupboard, but it is the worst smelling thing ever.
I used to run restaurants, and they would deliver 100-pound bags that way sometimes, and they'd try to sneak it onto you and bury it under 2 or 3 other bags, and then you'd have to catch them at it. And yes, they're horrid. Rotten potatoes are horrid.
It's like a corpse. It's terrible.
Yes.
Okay, so also we've covered the weather patterns, but also you discuss huge quakes coming and more beyond that. what are we talking there? And are we seeing a rise in quakes? I have noticed a few on the East Coast that are very uncommon.
And there's supposedly ground fires erupting in Southern California as well. Yeah, there's been a huge series of quakes going on in the Salton Sea, which is south of L.A., right before the Mexican border, the Baja border. Yes, when the planets pass by, and now Atu's moon is horrendously close to Earth right now, and it's really, really big. And that's the bubbly, big, weird momentous cloud round thing that everybody sees that has momentous clouds the size of New York State. Now, we've had some passes going by, yes, and that's caused some geological activity. Now, the part of the breakup of our tectonic plates is what is going to replace the gold. And a tectonic plate breakup has to occur every cycle. So, and I'm a firm believer that entire continents can slide across the ocean at a high rate of speed, including creating massive ocean-displacing tidal waves. So that's entirely possible. So and yes, we're seeing serious activity in Nevada, and that string of weird quakes is still going on in Idaho. And I believe that's a new building volcano. We don't have to worry about the old ones that have already blown. We have to worry about the ones that have never been born yet, volcanically. And people are watching Yellowstone, and then there was a series of quakes just like day before yesterday that went through the Grand Craton that was not reported by the USGS in any way. And yet I went through this, the graphs and saw them, that they were occurring, and then I gathered them together, and yes, it's a Grand Craton movement. And so there's a lot of information that's occurring that nobody knows about unless you actually go and look for it. And then you put the puzzle pieces together, and you see that this is, yes, affecting us geologically.
Yeah, the Yellowstone one is terrifying, I guess, with the land coming up and it being a super volcano. And by the land coming up, I mean that it's apparently risen 15 feet or something.
Oh, yeah, and it's noticeable if you go back to old footage on even the old Faithful Geyser. If you go back to old footage back from the 80s, it was flat-planed, and you look at it today, and there's this little mound that's gone like 30 feet up, and that whole area is rising. But Yellowstone is highly vented, so it's not going to go boom, because it's not, it's not a grenade that's been sat on, and shape-charged and all that. The ones that are going to blow, now, it's like, for instance,
it's like a thumb over the hose.
Right. Pikes Peak is an unblown volcano. Pikes Peak has never blown, but it's a huge, huge building volcano. That's in the middle of Colorado. And why the government was building underground there, I don't know. But anyway, maybe they know something I don't. But anyway, it's the unborn volcanoes, the ones like Mount Rainier and the Seven Sisters and all of that, and that whole area in California, and going all the way down the Baja and within the Ring of Fire, that the ones that have not blown yet that I would worry about. And of course, if you're living in a region that's close to one of these, and if you start to have geological uprisings and small tremors and stuff like that, well, then maybe it's time to move. But for the rest of it, if you're sitting next to an older volcano, I wouldn't really, really freak about it, like Yellowstone. Of course, I'm upwind of it, so maybe I'm a little arrogant, but because I've already calculated it would give me 75 minutes. If that son of a gun went boom, I'd have 75 minutes to go west. But that's not a lot of time. It is expected that we're going to have some geological nightmares. We don't even know how close they're going to get. They may even get closer next cycle or this cycle, because we're still going to run into the end of the 180-day cycle is always the harshest in September. And somewhere in the middle, it ends in September somewhere. But right at the end there, September, October, who knows what in December, because there's all these rumors going on around. But we could see a lot worse yet in a very short period of time. But then I gotta admit that in 2013, I thought we were in deep crap back then, and here we are in 2020. So I stopped giving any warning for dates after that. I just say, worry when the ground starts shaking under you, which it did here. We had that 6.7 in Idaho the other day, about a month and a half ago. That was pretty cool. I loved it. I was like, oh my God, terrible. But yeah, I want another one,
Yeah, there's something. I'm a rubbernecker. I can't help it. It's like...
Yeah, it was like, it was cool. It was really cool. I mean, and the whole house shook back and forth for quite a while.
Yeah.
And it's been tremoring ever since. And then, of course, we had the one in North Carolina the other day, and that was a pretty big one. And it's still continuing on. It's doing a little aftermathing going on. So it's active. There's more stuff to come. We need to pay attention.
So do you think, not on a political or financial level, but with all this geological stuff going on, do you think we're kind of asking for it with fracking and stuff like that? Because
absolutely.
You made mention of the government doing construction there, so I would assume that if construction could cause problems, then fracking could.
Oh, yeah, what they're pumping in the ground is just, and they actually buy horrible chemicals from companies that can't get rid of it any other way, and pump that crap down in there and go, okay, well, it's going to create this heated effect because of all the chemicals, and it'll fracture the shale, and then the gas will come out of the shale, and yeah, it's horrible. And then if they supposedly suck all of this stuff out, like they say and there's no way they can do that because it's getting into the groundwater. And you talk about the PCBs in our environment, and how much nuclear radioactive waste was pumped down in old Texas wells and stuff throughout the whole area in Oklahoma, and the crap they pumped down in the ground in the 40s and 50s that is no longer even recorded anywhere because those records were on paper and turned to dust years ago. And do you know what strategic oil reserves are?
Well, I guess I always assumed they were like a reservoir, but I don't.
Right, but do you know what that reservoir is made of?
No.
They pump it straight down into an ice dam or an ice tower. Excuse me, a salt tower, I'm saying ice. A salt dome area, a region where they have salt, they will sequester oil in the ground. They don't even have a tank. The strategic oil reserves are pumped directly into the ground.
Well, that doesn't seem very strategic.
Nor does it seem sanitary or clean or actually a possibility of absolute retrieval, kind of a money loss if you ask me. But they have been pumping stuff underground and into the ground for so long that if we looked at those records, every one of those people would be hung by the nearest yardarm. There is so much chemistry, pollution going on in this country, and if we found out and we actually went in and went after these people, most of them are long dead is the problem. And I worked for the city here, and if you knew what the city does with some of their chemistry waste, their toxic waste, and stripping companies and plating companies and all of this, and now our Clean Water Act has been removed from us. If you knew all the crap that they were pumping in the ground, you'd be amazed that we're still alive. And we're seeing effects of PCB poisoning and all this other stuff from fracking and water supplies, and these people are talking about cancers and how their children are dying, and they're not doing anything about it, and it's already too late. That's the problem. Right. We've already let them pollute the living hell out of ourselves. And you almost have to ask yourself, where can I get safe water? Because safe water doesn't even exist anymore, because they're adding remanufactured water treatment plant water and then selling it at Walmart.
Yeah, it's like, what is that, Dr. Strangelove, where the General Scott would only drink rainwater.
Yeah, and even that right now could be radioactive.
Right, yeah.
Because of Fukushima. Yeah, and if you get because I'm a living witness. I got rained on from a Fukushima rain, and I got burns, and I ended up with thyroid cancer. And they didn't ask me if I had been exposed. They said, when were you exposed to a great deal of radiation? They didn't ask me if. They said when.
That's terrifying.
And then, of course, I had thyroid cancer, and I had half of my thyroid removed, and I still have another polyp, and I have to go in for more.
Yeah, that's
because
terrible.
It was a sarcoma, not a melanoma. It was growing on the outside so they could surgically remove it.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Yeah, and it's not fun because I'm suffering from it. But anyway, but don't know our environment is safe anymore in so many ways. And if you were smart, you'd actually stay inside and stay the hell away from all of this. Don't go out in the rain. God, don't go out in the rain right now.
Oh, that's one of my favorite things to do, though, frankly.
I know. I love it, too. I love going out in a nice warm rainstorm. I love it, and I can't do that now. And every time I even get a couple of drops on me, I go, oh, shit.
Yeah, there's this old Ray Bradbury story, and I feel like the opposite. They're a group of kids, people living on Mars, and like one day every several years or something, it doesn't rain, and this kid gets bullied and locked in a closet while everybody else gets to go play in the sun, and he has to. And I'm like the opposite of that. It's like when the rains come, I'm just all, yes, I'm going outside for the first time in months because it's raining,
Mm-hmm.
But
right.
Now I probably should avoid that.
The thyroid cancer rate in Canada is through the roof, because they were getting most of the straight across weather right after Fukushima.
And that's like a jet stream thing. They're like connected to some
right.
sort of airstream.
Right. And there's been people over the last couple, I haven't seen too many reports of it recently, but then our connection to Canada has been weaned away somehow on Facebook and all of this. They can't watch some of our movies. We can't watch a lot of their stuff. Same thing in England. England is highly filtered. They don't get to watch a lot of the stuff that we produce. They're just not allowed to.
Yeah, that's weird.
And, there is a huge amount of, you wouldn't believe the number of banned books the United States alone has. They're in the millions.
Oh,
millions.
Just to bring it back to my own conversation that I was just having, I remember when I was a kid, they were talking about bringing Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451 into schools, but they wanted to censor it. And it's like, you can't censor a book about censorship. It's like,
right.
What is that all about?
Get me started about the school system. They're teaching people, even in the hospitals now, about 23 chromosomes. Well, the human has 24 chromosomes.
I don't understand.
Our 24th chromosome is clipped. Lab clipped.
Oh, like CRISPR'd? Oh, wait, CRISPR is the DNA.
Right. It's good technology. CRISPR technology is fantastic, by the way. But anyway, that's
but
like
what do you mean it's been clipped? I don't understand.
And that's why they don't tell people about our 24th chromosome, because our 24th chromosome is clipped. And if we had our 24th chromosome fully, we would self-heal, and we would also live for 2,000 years. I
see what you're saying. By clipped, you mean it's been taken away?
It's been laboratory DNA clipped using CRISPR technology, exactly.
Right. I'm always full of movie references, but it's like lifespans on replicants and Blade Runner.
Well, I'll dip into that bag again. We're clones.
Right.
We are created workers that were designed from numerous other breeds of races put together and then added to the ape. And then over a series of numerous tries and fails, because there's been numerous versions of us, through this we have been manipulated into that which we are. We were not created by God. We were created by demigods.
I see.
And this technology created what the human is. And there are parts of the Pleiadians in us, and there's parts of the Draco race, and parts of some other race, and some other race of 12. I'm told it was 12 different genome donors plus the human ape. So, and that's why there's been so many numerous versions of Cro-Magnon man, blah 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 blah.
Right, makes sense. The upgrade.
I mean, there's a lot of room in 300,000 years to do all kinds of stuff. And what happened prior to that, what kind of development and how was the system run and were we created? And, that information I don't have. But I know that we are manipulated intentionally.
Right. Well, we don't have too long until the end here. I did want to ask you, before we start telling people where they can find out more about you, I did want to ask you, what should people be looking for coming up When looking up at the sky, what should they expect to see? What should they be keeping their eye out for at this point, at this phase that we're in?
Currently, we've seen a lot of really fast-breaking storms. The people have been talking about how it was clear skied, and then all of a sudden they start to see these little puffs of something coming in, and then before you know it, the wind started kicking up, and then they had this crazy storm that just came in really fast and then travels over fast, and it's damaging. So we need to watch out for those. If you're sitting in the living room and all of a sudden it gets intensely dark out and you're thinking something's really, really weird and why does it look so funny outside, go outside and look, because it might be something. Now, granted, it could be just a couple of clouds going over. You could have a normal storm, or it could be something more important. But you don't need a telescope to see these planets. They are here. Look up, dark gray-black sunglasses. Can't see it through lenses, no welding glasses, etc. If you see a really weird dark thing in the sky, one side of the sun or the other, and the rest of the sky looks different, well, then you're seeing a passing planet. Now, it's harder to see them at sea level. When you're higher up, you get a better view of it, and then you can't go out there and spend 5 minutes. You have to go out there for a little length period of time to get these, and they're not always in the same spot, and they move. So best time is to see them is mid-afternoon to evening. If you're new at it, sometimes in the mornings, you'll see some weird stuff. If you see some weird milky sky, something's really wrong with what you're seeing, spend some time looking. You'll figure it out. Or come in and then start looking at our information that we share regularly on Montana Skywatchers on Facebook, or type my name, Samuel Hofman, SamuelHofman. I only have one F because I'm the Dutch version instead of the German version of Hofman. And the best way to do this is keep at it and know that we're not guessing anymore. We've been so long at this and everything is matched for so many years that it has become fact. It is no longer a theory or a hypothesis. This has been proven. And the trick is to get on board with it, or, like I said earlier, stick your head back in the sand, because we've got company.
All right. Well, I appreciate you being on the show. It's always fun having you on. And it's always new information, and I really appreciate it. It's obviously something that you spend a lot of time doing, because we always have new information coming. You've been listening to Samuel Hofman here on Radio Wasteland. You want to find out more about him? Montana Skywatcher 2 is his group up on Facebook, or you can search up Samuel Hofman. If you go to Montana Skywatcher 2 on Facebook, one of the very first posts is this interesting storm moving across the states with the lightning that we have been talking about. So a lot of interesting stuff to see there. And again, thank you, Samuel, for coming on the show.
I really like to thank you for having me and helping get out the word, because there's so many apparent things that are trying to stop us from, because you went through that today.
Technologically, I have. Yes, I did.
Yeah, because my phone is disconnected, can't you tell, as we speak over it right now.
Right, and for those listening, I am a techie guy, so for me to run into issues, it's not common.
Yeah, and they're messing with the truth. So let's start, put our pith hat, the jungle adventure hat on, and let's go on an adventure.
All right. Again, you've been listening to Samuel Hofman here on Radio Wasteland. Montana Skywatcher 2 on Facebook. Check it out. Have a good evening.